Paul Barthélemy Biya Bimvando was born on February 13, 1933 in the forested village of Mvomikere in southern Cameroon, long before the country gained independence. The son of a Catholic catechist and a devoted mother grounded in discipline and faith, young Paul Biya began his journey at local mission schools before joining the minor seminary in Ikono. Even as a boy, he was known for quiet intelligence and strong self-control. After excelling at Lycée General Leclerc in Yaoundé, he earned a scholarship to study in France, where he trained in law and political science at institutions like the Institut de Hautes Études d'Outre-mer and the prestigious Lycée Louis-le-Grand. His education prepared him not only for civil service but for power. When Biya returned to Cameroon in the early 1960s, independence was still fresh and the nation was politically fragile. President Amadou Ahidjo was consolidating authority over a country trying to unite its French-speaking majority with the smaller but vocal English-speaking population in the West. Biya entered the presidency quietly at first as a charge de mission, and soon rose to become director of the civil cabinet in 1967. He gained a reputation for discipline, loyalty, and efficiency, qualities Ahidjo admired. That loyalty was rewarded when Biya became Cameroon's prime minister in 1975 and constitutional successor by a 1979 reform. It shocked many when Ahidjo abruptly resigned in 1982, handing over leadership to the soft-spoken but enigmatic Biya. With his ascension to the presidency on November 6, 1982, Biya inherited a one-party state dominated by Ahidjo's Cameroon National Union. Initially, Biya promised openness, reform, and what he called rigor and moralization. But as tensions with Ahidjo grew, culminating in a violent coup attempt in 1984, Biya tightened his grip on power. He reshaped the ruling party into the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement in 1985, replacing Ahidjo's loyalists with his own. The following years saw a centralized presidency, gradual political repression, and growing frustration among Cameroonians who felt locked out of decision-making. The 1990s brought a storm of change across Africa as the Cold War ended and many Western allies demanded democratic reforms from long-standing rulers. In Cameroon, pressure mounted from students, trade unions, and opposition figures like John Frundi of the Social Democratic Front. Biya legalized multiparty politics in 1990 under heavy pressure, but elections remained tightly managed. Disputed elections in 1992, which Biya narrowly survived, taught him a lesson about political survival. From that point on, every electoral process was carefully controlled. The opposition was divided or co-opted, and the state media praised him as the architect of modern Cameroon. The new millennium did not bring the transformation many citizens had hoped for. Unemployment remained high and corruption worsened, even after Biya launched anti-corruption campaigns that critics said targeted rivals more than actual thieves. In 2008, against intense local protest, Biya changed the constitution to abolish presidential term limits, clearing the path for his lifelong rule. A year later, Transparency International ranked Cameroon among the most corrupt nations on earth, but Biya's rule remained unshaken. As Biya aged, new crises tested his leadership. The rise of Boko Haram militants in northern Cameroon brought deadly attacks, kidnappings, and mass displacement beginning in 2014. Biya deployed troops but also relied heavily on local vigilante forces. At the same time, a grave internal conflict erupted in the Anglophone regions when lawyers and teachers protested marginalization by the Francophone-dominated government. The crisis escalated into an armed separatist war as groups calling for an independent Ambazonia clashed with government forces. Entire villages were burned, schools closed, journalists arrested, and thousands killed or displaced. International human rights groups accused Biya's government of brutality, but Yaoundé insisted it was fighting terrorism. Still, Biya continued to win elections, 2004, 2011, 2018, despite widespread allegations of fraud. His long stays in Switzerland for medical treatment became a symbol of his distance from ordinary Cameroonians. Critics often described Cameroon as a presidency on autopilot, where a small circle of elites controlled power and resources while the president ruled from afar. The 2025 presidential election was expected to be a turning point. Biya was 92 and had ruled for 43 years. Surely many thought he would step down or name a successor. But once again, he ran under the CPDM banner. His main challenger was Issa Tchiroma Bakary, a seasoned politician and longtime government minister who had reinvented himself as a populist critic of Biya. Tchiroma, born in 1949 in Garoua in northern Cameroon, had a long and complex history. He once opposed Biya during the turbulent 1990s and was even imprisoned after the failed 1984 coup attempt. Yet he later served as Biya's Minister of Communication and Transport before breaking away again to form his own party, the National Union for Democracy and Progress. Seen by some as a survivor and political contortionist, Tchiroma was nevertheless popular in parts of the north and among urban youth frustrated with decades of stagnation. The 2025 campaign unfolded amid tension, military deployment, and internet shutdowns in restive regions. Opposition rallies were restricted, some candidates claimed threats, and civil society groups reported ballot irregularities. When Election Day arrived on October 12th, turnout was low in conflict zones and opposition supporters complained of intimidation. Days later, the Constitutional Council declared Biya the winner with 53.66% of the vote, while Issa Tchiroma Bakary received just over 35%. The announcement sparked protests in Douala, Bamenda, and Garoua, where people called foul and chanted, "50 years is enough." Security forces quickly dispersed crowds, and the government declared accusations of fraud unfounded. And yet, beyond the official numbers, there is a deeper story. Paul Biya has become one of the world's longest-serving and oldest presidents, ruling Cameroon for over 4 decades. His leadership spans generations. He has outlasted Ronald Reagan, François Mitterrand, Margaret Thatcher, Muammar Gaddafi, and Robert Mugabe. He has governed through the Cold War, globalization, and the digital age, and now presides over a restless nation facing unemployment, separatist conflict, and rising dissent. His challenger, Issa Tchiroma Bakary, stands as a symbol of Cameroon's complicated political struggle, a former prisoner turned minister turned opposition voice, mirroring the twists and turns of a country still searching for stable democracy. As Biya begins yet another term, Cameroon stands at a crossroads between continuity and change, with the future uncertain and the weight of history heavier than ever. Paul Biya's long time in power has been a journey marked by both achievement and deep failure, a story of a leader who brought moments of stability yet left behind a nation wrestling with division, frustration, and unfulfilled promise. When he took over the presidency in 1982, many Cameroonians believed he would modernize the country and correct the excesses of the previous regime. In his early years, he projected an image of calm confidence and diplomatic grace. He maintained strong relations with France and other Western partners, securing loans and development support that helped build key national infrastructure. Under his leadership, Cameroon invested in roads, telecommunications, and public buildings, including new universities in Biya, Chang, Ngoundra, and Maroua. These institutions expanded access to higher education and shaped a generation of scholars and professionals. He also navigated the reunification question with Nigeria peacefully, taking the long-standing Bakassi Peninsula dispute to the International Court of Justice and securing a negotiated settlement that prevented war between the two neighbors. For this, he was praised as a leader of peace and quiet diplomacy in Africa. But as the years passed, the promise of reform faded. What began as cautious leadership hardened into centralized power. Political openness came slowly and painfully. Though multiparty politics was introduced in 1990, it was tightly controlled, and opposition voices were often silenced through arrests, intimidation, and state pressure. Elections became predictable rituals in which Biya would win again and again, each time amid accusations of fraud. Corruption spread through government institutions like a chronic disease. Public funds disappeared into private pockets, and nepotism became a way of life. Biya announced anti-corruption campaigns from time to time, but critics believed they were aimed more at eliminating political rivals than genuinely cleaning up the system. Economically, his early years saw progress, with agricultural and oil production boosting the treasury. Cameroon was once described as Africa in miniature, a nation blessed with natural resources. But over time, Mismanagement weakened industries, and the gap between rich and poor widened sharply. High unemployment became the new normal, especially among the youth, and despite Cameroon being classified as a lower middle-income country, millions lived in poverty without access to reliable healthcare, electricity, or clean water. Infrastructure projects moved slowly, contracts were inflated, and many rural communities felt abandoned. Yet Biya remained a master of survival. He balanced ethnic and regional interests carefully, keeping powerful elites loyal by distributing government positions and resources. He maintained strong defense ties with foreign allies and presented himself as a shield against instability in Central Africa. When Boko Haram militants began attacking northern Cameroon in 2014, Biya's government responded with military force and joined regional security coalitions with Nigeria and Chad. His troops recaptured towns, pushed back fighters, and protected borders. On the international stage, he was seen as a reliable partner in the fight against terrorism. But another fire was burning inside the country, one even more dangerous than Boko Haram. In 2016, peaceful protests by lawyers and teachers in the Anglophone regions turned into a national crisis. These protesters said they were marginalized and treated as second-class citizens in a country dominated by French-speaking leadership. Instead of genuine dialogue, the government sent security forces. Lives were lost, arrests were made, and resentment exploded into armed conflict. Separatist groups emerged, demanding the independence of a nation they called Ambazonia. Villages were burned, schools shut down, children grew up amid gunfire, and the region descended into fear. This conflict became one of the darkest failures of Biya's leadership. Analysts blamed his rigid approach and refusal to compromise for escalating a manageable protest into a bloody war. As the years went by, Biya became increasingly distant. He spent long periods in Switzerland for medical treatment, earning the nickname the absentee president. Critics wondered who was really ruling the country, Biya or the circle of powerful ministers and businessmen around him. Transparency faded, trust declined, and state institutions weakened. Journalists were arrested for reporting on sensitive issues, opposition rallies were banned, and public frustration simmered beneath the surface. Many young Cameroonians grew up never knowing another president. To them, Biya was less a leader and more a permanent fixture, a man whose power seemed endless and untouchable. And still, his government pointed to achievements. The creation of new roads and hydroelectric dams like Lampangar, the modernization of Yaoundé and Douala, success in hosting Africa Cup of Nations tournaments, and Cameroon's continued role as a relatively peaceful nation in a troubled region. His defenders argued that he guaranteed unity, avoided coups like those in neighboring countries, and protected Cameroon from total collapse. But his critics saw a different legacy: democratic paralysis, deep corruption, regional division, and a people losing hope in change. In the end, Paul Biya's rule became a paradox: part progress, part stagnation, part survival, part suppression. He built universities but oversaw declining education quality. He prevented war with Nigeria but failed to prevent war at home. He spoke of national unity but ruled a nation more divided than ever. His achievements cannot be denied, but neither can his failures be hidden. He has been praised as a strategist of stability and condemned as a president who stayed in power for too long. The story of his leadership is not just his story. It is the story of Cameroon itself, a land full of potential, trapped between what it could be and what it has become.